Aloha, friends and family. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Embodied Healing Self. And today we are coming to you live with my guest, Glenn Ambrose, who is joining us from the Dominican Republic. We were just chatting before we came on the show about it's Cabarete. Is it right? Is the area close to you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the closest town that I spend a lot of time in.
So he's up in the mountains, but I was sharing with him that my best friend and I, who are windsurfers, have had the intention to visit this town, which is a really fun place for windsurfing and kiteboarding. So we may be meeting in person someday. So
Hopefully.
but here, maybe, you never know. Possibilities are limitless. So, but for today, I'm excited to bring him on the show. As I mentioned in the bio, he's an author, he's a spiritual life coach, and he has a podcast, Life Lessons. Is that what it is?
Life Lessons and Laughter.
Yeah. Okay. Life Lessons and Laughter. And we all need a little bit more laughter in this spiritual space, which is what intrigued me to listen to the show. And as I listened, there were a couple things that really resonated with me. And I thought, why not just invite him and have him as a guest on the show? So thank you so much for being here with me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure as well. So I want to invite you to just share a little bit about the work that you do and how you got into it.
Okay, so the Reader's Digest version of my life story.
No big deal. No big deal. Just,
Well, fortunately, I've done it a few times. So yeah, I mean, just kind of a recap. I grew up in Massachusetts, good family, good childhood, but there were some issues, a little ADHD, a little getting in trouble a lot, which turned into alcoholism for 20 years. And then I kind of hit my bottom, and I ended up waking up spiritually through getting sober. And just everything blew open, and I understood a lot of universal truths, spiritual truths, and I just blew open. And ever since then, that was going on 19 years ago now, over 18 years ago. So since then I've been on this spiritual path, and it's the foundation basis of my entire existence, in my life. So that kind of turned into becoming a life coach. And that was probably about 10 years ago. And I found that I had been kind of learning how to be a life coach the years prior, because I was working with a lot of alcoholics and addicts, and a lot of it, it's very similar work, believe it or not. It's just a little more obvious when an addict is having difficulties, because it manifests in grandiose physical ways a lot of times. Other people kind of suffer in silence a little bit more. But what people are dealing with, it's the same thing. And that's kind of the basis for how I work and how I look at things. I'm able to see underneath everything and understand the dynamics, and, not get caught up in the specifics of things. Most people look at the specifics, and that's not where your answers are. It's deeper, it's underneath. So I try to connect there and then work my way back up. And it's proven to be very helpful for a lot of people, including myself. I've got to walk the walk. So, so yeah, that's kind of how it all got started. And my podcast really took off years ago internationally. So that's been feeding my business. And then I wrote a book a few years ago, and that helps as well, of course. The book is it's only like around 200 pages, but it has 60 chapters in it. So they're very short chapters, and I didn't necessarily intend to write it that way. That's just kind of how it came out. So I think it gives a good overview of spiritual living and some very helpful hints, like on day-to-day things that you can implement immediately to enhance your life. But it's also a good reference book, because you can just skip through the chapters, get through the contents and be like, okay, I want to look at this chapter. And it's only a page or two, some of them are a little bit longer, but so it's a good reference book as well. And that's called Down to Earth, The Spiritual Being's Guide to a Happy Human Experience.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's also a reference book, because I feel like in the world that we live in today, that's what we need. It's like, oh, I'm navigating this challenge. What is that? Like, how do I connect with that? And if I had a book, I could just look and be like, give me an example. Like, what are a couple of the chapters that are in the book? Because I have not, full disclosure, read the book. I've listened to many of the podcast episodes, but I haven't read the book. So what kind of, just a few examples. So there
that's
it is.
The book.
Beautiful.
Yeah, some of the chapters are temporal and spiritual realms, so it kind of goes into that, and the difference between the two. Fulfillment, what it is, 3 steps to solving any problem, the ego explained, complaining. So
what's your favorite chapter in the book?
This 60, I don't know.
Because
okay,
it's the last one.
I'm gonna go with this one just because it's the way the energy is flowing right now. It's spiritual laughter.
There we go.
You talked about it before, and that's one of the things that I love about spirituality is the laughter. I mean, I got voted class clown, like literally.
I got best sense of humor.
See? There's a purpose to it.
Well, thanks for saying that, because I'm in a place of remembering that. Like I want to kind of speak to this, because as you say that, I'm like, there have been moments where I'm like, how the hell did I get voted best sense of humor? Because like all of a sudden life got really hard and became super serious, and I had kids and then it's like, no, like there's a choice, right? Like, yeah, stuff is hard, but like, there's a choice in all of this. And I've had the intention to step further into joy since last year. So that was one of the things I was drawn to, is that you do bring laughter into it. So tell me a little bit about, like, what is spiritual laughter?
Well, spiritual laughter is, I think we can bring a lot more joy and a lot more laughter into our lives in a lot of ways. Everybody has their own style, and there's a place for everybody's style. But there's a lot of very serious teachers out there that are in the mainstream. And it's like, to me, with a strong sense of humor, it's always been like, what's the point? I want to have fun. Like, like, why am I doing all this spiritual work? To be very, very serious and stern all the time? And, I know the truth, lighten up. We're here to enjoy it, so I try to bring that laughter. And one of specifically the spiritual laughter that I'm talking about is it has very specific qualities, and most people have experienced it. And what it is it's like when you see the absolute truth, the spiritual truth, the universal truth about something, namely like a behavior that you're judging or something. When you see the truth about that, we literally break out in laughter. You're sitting at, like, when you're all caught up in something, and then all of a sudden it dawns on you, like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't even important. Yeah. And you just start laughing. The reason that's so important is because it's spiritual practice, because you've connected to the truth, which is where the laughter is coming from. And if you pay attention to the qualities of it, you notice that there is zero judgment in it. Mm-hmm. You're laughing with yourself. You're laughing with the absurdity of what our ego or the conditioning of society has taught us to be. And you see it for what it is. And it's not, oh, that's crap, my ego sucks, society sucks. It's not that. It's, this is silly.
Yeah.
It's just silly. There's no judgment. There's no blame. There's no nothing. It's just a heartfelt giggle that comes from inside. And it's just beautiful spiritual practice.
So what would you say to somebody who's listening right now who's like, yeah, that sounds good, but like, what, how do you practice laughter if you're not feeling it? Like, I'm just thinking of the person who might be a little bit, I don't know, skeptical right now. Like, what would you say to that person?
Well, I mean, one, just it can't be forced.
Yeah.
This is kind of one of my foundational beliefs about spirituality. It's, we try too hard. It's spiritual terms are things like forget, remember, allow. They imply non-effort.
I love that. Yeah.
So go into a corner and remember real hard. It's like you can't effort in spiritual terms. So this is it's that mentality. So you can't force yourself into spiritual laughter. It has to come spontaneously. So try just bringing a little bit more joy and allowing yourself to laugh in everyday life, and just so you can kind of lighten up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, if you want to dive into some spiritual laughter, well, then, I mean, one way that I found it kind of unexpectedly was I follow things all the way down to the core, like follow them all the way through. It's like, oh, this is bothering me. Well, why is it bothering me? Well, because of this. And it's like, oh, well, is that true? I have very deep conversations with myself, to keep going. And then also, if I keep following it, and then all of a sudden, usually I get to a realization that a lot of times it has a very close tie to what I'm thinking about, of course. But a more general one might be, I'll get to the point where I'm just like, in 5 years, this isn't going to matter.
Probably less than that.
Yeah, probably next week.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
but like, it's temporary. Like, why am I making such a big deal out of this? It's really not. And if you don't slip into the judgment of yourself, you find this lighthearted, contented, peaceful joy that's within your heart. And it's always there. It's just, sometimes we have to work through all the conditioning to get to it.
Yeah, that's exactly it, is the conditioning. I want to touch on a couple things that I've heard you say in a couple of your podcasts. And in fact, as you say that, like, I know exactly when my story shifted to being a senior in high school and getting voted best sense of humor, not because I was funny, but really because I laughed at everything, I think. And then going into college, and there was just a moment where someone said something to me, and there was the belief that was created that it wasn't safe for me to continue showing up the way that I was. And so I just I remember that moment. And so I think that's part of the conditioning. But when you look at children, like, they're so much more in their joy. And one of the things I talk with my children often, and even say often, is like, man, adults just get way too serious, way too quick. And I mean, it's so true though. And, and I'll always tell my kids, like, don't be in a hurry to grow up, like, just, have fun with it. But a couple of things that you and I are aligned with in what you say is, I don't remember which podcast episode it is, but I had written a quote around, like, I've said something like, relax into the truth of who you are. And so when I hear you say, like, spirituality is not effort, I think we all just need to relax a little bit and just maybe, like, explore that we're right on track. And if we just surrender and just continue intentionally taking steps towards the flow of where we're going, like, maybe we can be curious about what that might look like. And that is really probably not where most of us are spending most of our time in that energy. We're really trying to, I guess the opposite would be control and, uh, manipulate, or like, I don't even know. I mean,
And
and then
it's the difference between the energies. It's like, a lot of my clients, I tell them, play around with whatever you're trying to be intentional with. Like if you want to find out, if you want to change careers and you don't know what you're going to do, play around looking into things. Don't go try to find it, because like when we effort, it's constricting.
Yes.
I'm going to try real hard. Like if you just pay attention to your body, how it feels, if you're really trying and you're really focused, you can almost feel your body compress and tighten, and that restricts flow. So this is why spirituality is non-efforting. So when we go into a relaxed state, and we say, I'm not going to go find my new career and figure out what my purpose is. No, go play around with things that bring you joy. Those are hints to what your purpose is.
Absolutely.
So it's just you go about it differently. You go about it more in a curiosity, playful, childlike manner, as opposed to constricting and finding and
yeah. I've been using that language for so long in so many different aspects of my coaching career that really, even just like setting a goal or having an expectation or being attached to an outcome is so limiting, because 100 times more than not, whatever happens when we let go of that expectation is actually greater and more beyond what we originally even set out for. And that's really hard. It's really hard for people to, well, I want to be careful with my words, but what I notice is that, that's an invitation for a huge shift in how we show up, because creating a space that feels constricting might feel safe for some people. It might, it also, quite honestly, gives us, interestingly enough, and this is coming through, but it can give us a reason is to validate like why things don't work for us, or it can give us a reason to blame or project. Like it can just take us right down that rabbit hole of the ego, where we just stay where we are because we're just so tight and constricted on this is the way it has to be, or it's not going to be that way. And that is so uncomfortable in the body. It's, on the other side of that is freedom. And I think that's where laughter comes back in, is there's like such a sense of freedom when we give ourselves permission to be in joy and laughter. And so Glenn and I are giving all of the listeners permission to explore the things that bring you joy, because they are connected to your purpose. If you're looking for something that you think is going to bring you more money, or you're looking for something that you think others want, let's just rewind and take a step back. Follow the thing that lights you up and brings you joy. And, uh, give yourself permission to explore it and be willing to just be in the space of like, what is it going to feel like when I'm doing this and I get paid for it? Because that's really fun too.
Yeah.
I want to shift the conversation into spiritual integration, because you started to talk about the body. Like the body has a wisdom, it speaks to us. That those are words that I use, body wisdom. But it was one of the podcasts that I listened to that I was really interested in, because I've been on I've been in this space for about 16 years, and really since my near-death experience, but every level has shown me something new. And I went through a phase of, I guess, kind of my spiritual journey where I noticed it felt too hard and too kind of almost painful to be here. And I was like really in this space of like ascension and meditation and disconnecting from my body. And then I can remember one of my mentors, to the point where I literally was in a retreat, and then I was pulled into like somebody else's trauma vortex. So I was not grounded in my body at all. And I was like, whoa, this is not healthy. And one of my mentors said, why don't you just meditate with your eyes open? And I was like, okay, I'll meditate with my eyes open. That makes me more present in my body. And then I started just noticing that my practice began to shift. And I just kept hearing messages like, if you're here to embody your spirit. That's what the body is for. It's like the container, the vessel that holds your spirit. And to show up as you are, you've got to align that consciousness, that vibration. The word you used was integrate that and align it to the physical body. So I want to invite you to share your take on that. What is spiritual integration to you, and how important is it for us to understand it? Another really easy question.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's very important for us to understand it. Like I don't believe in holding things too tightly. Give them room to breathe, and shift as you grow and as you expand. And plus, if you're holding them lightly, you're not holding them tightly. And if you're not holding them tightly, then you're not constricted. You're more relaxed and flowing. So that being said, I think it's very important to understand, that we are spiritual beings first, having a human experience. That's why I put that in the subtitle of my book, because I wanted to include that, because I believe it's foundational. I believe that everybody's looking for, the reason that just about everybody on the planet has control issues is because we're looking for safety. Well, why are we looking for safety? It's because we don't feel we have it. And we're looking to try to acquire the illusion of it through control. At the end of the day, we can't control anything. So, which COVID has shown us, thank God.
Yes.
So, but it's never been there. We've never had control over life and how it flows, so this is kind of how I really got clarity on it, because I was working with people, and when I really started seeing the people pleasers.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
When I really started getting deep with the people pleasers, and I saw all their control issues, because a lot of people pleasers don't think they have control issues, because they're always doing for other people, right? But they have huge control issues. So once I really started seeing that, I was like, oh my God, like everybody has control issues. So then as soon as I say everybody has something, that's like a red flag for me to dive into it. Because to me, that means like it means it's something important. If everybody has it, it's important. Most of the time it means it's innate, or and it's kind of just how we're made. But then other times it's just a rampant issue from our conditioning socially. So I dove into it, and what I was getting for information was like, yeah, everybody has control issues. Why? Because they want to feel safe, and it gives them illusion of safety. Okay, well, so can we feel safe without, is there such a thing as safety? And I said, no, not in the temporal realm, not here on earth, because we live in an ever-changing reality. So you cannot, you can't feel safe when you don't know what's coming next. So there is no safety here. So I'm like, okay, so if there's no safety here, and yet everybody craves safety, there's a disconnect here. I'm missing
exactly
some.
That's what I just wrote down. Yeah.
Right. So I have to, how can I bridge this gap? And I was like, okay, there's no safety here. Let's assume that to be true, but we all yearn for it. So either God is a major jerk, or I'm missing something. And I don't believe God's a jerk, so I think I'm missing something. So what I found was, I was like, well, if there's no safety here, is there any other place? Well, yeah, there's a spiritual dimension. Is, the spiritual reality, or temporal, eternal reality, and temporal reality. Okay, is there safety there? Yes. Eternally, nothing. It's never changing. So there's consistency there. There's safety there. There's love there. And then everything clicked, and I went, okay, so this is why it's so important. What we're supposed to be doing was, we're supposed to be anchored into our spiritual truth, that we are safe, we are loved, and everything's okay eternally. From that seat of safety, now we can interact with life on a temporal, ever changing, like we're on a adventure vacation. You don't know what's going to happen, and it's kind of fun and it's exciting, and we have experiences, and then we go home.
Mhm.
And we don't take it so seriously. We have to create separation between our safety and feeling okay within ourselves
Mm.
to what's happening outside of ourselves. It's like watching a movie. I usually use the movie example. Like when you're in a movie, you don't dive under the seat when somebody pulls out a gun, but yet you can experience sadness to the point where you cry. Your heart rate can jack up when you get excited. You can get scared, you can get happy, you can laugh, you can experience all the emotions and all the things, but you know that you're not in danger because there's that separation subconsciously.
Mhm.
And this is very similar to how I believe we should be living our lives. Anchor into the safety, and then don't take life so seriously. Play with it. It's just temporary. We're just here for a little while. Just have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah, what came through for me is I was just curious as you were saying that. You're saying to anchor into safety, and I'm thinking to anchor into the body, because the body is the physical manifestation that the spirit anchors into, and the word that comes through is a lot is trust. It's like, so what is it that feels safe in the spiritual realm for me is just that, like, it's love and trust. It's not, it's just, or truth, maybe the word truth comes through. And what I wrote down is that, I was just curious, like, well, I'm wondering if one of one of the manifestations of this feeling unsafe comes from that feeling of disconnection. And then you use the word disconnect, but I think it's like we perceive, because we're never really disconnected, but we perceive that we're disconnected from source, from God, from spirit, and then we do create habits that do disconnect us from our body. Like, we don't listen to our body, we don't from, I mean, I do, but not, but until we've learned the importance of it, even the foods to eat, or listening to our intuition, and all of those things that we can experience in human form. Joy, anger, all those things are part of the human experience. None of those things exist in the spiritual plane, or I should say they're not felt, they're just kind of witnessed. Like you said, we can practice that in this experience. And I was just thinking, maybe the reason so many of us are seeking safety, maybe what we're really seeking is trust or connection. And so there's so many levels to that. It's because if we think of a child, right, like, safety to them is like a mother holding them. If we think of, relationships, like, safety is connection, we feel like we trust the person if we feel connected. If we think of terms in safety spiritually, it's like knowing and trusting in God is like, there's like a safety, like a truth there. So I don't know, that's just kind of what came through for me, is that we shift it to think of a need to feel safe when maybe it's really about just trust and connection. So that's kind of what was coming through for me as you shared that.
Yeah. And I think it's, of course we want to have connections on earth. And of course we want to choose a partner in life that we can trust and stuff like that. And there are certain levels that the word trust and safety applies to those things. But I think, for me anyway, on a subconscious level, there's this aspect that I know it's not true safety, because it's not, because, like, I can't trust a partner to always be there for me, because one, they can't, because they don't know what's going on inside of me. Hell, I can't even be there for myself all the time. How are they supposed to, or, I mean, God forbid an accident happens and this person is no longer on the planet. Well, did they break our trust? Well, no, it's a temporary, reality that we're in. So everything always changes. So you can't, I don't feel I can fully, if I want complete safety, and complete trust, it has to come from my source, because
Yeah.
it's the only thing that's eternal. It has to come from a spiritual source. I can have lighter versions of it while I'm here.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of an important part of our experience here.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're hanging out with people you can't trust, I recommend you change that,
Yeah.
but yeah, from a subconscious, truth-based, eternal truth-based idea, that's how I'm looking at it, where it's just that ultimate safety, that unconditional love
Yeah.
that never fails ever and is always there, not only in this lifetime, but before we're here and after we leave, and eternally. That is where, if I anchor into that, I find safety. And
Yeah.
then, and then this is kind of goes back to your original question, like when I'm connected to source, that's how I bring the love and the truth into this reality, be a portal of truth and love into this reality, by being connected to it. If I'm not connected to it, how's it supposed to flow through me into this reality? So, and that's how I want to embody it. So I have to connect to it and allow it to flow through my body into this reality, because we're vibrational beings. So whatever vibration we're vibrating at, that's what's going to come through us.
Yeah. And I love that you say allowing, because that comes back to just, effortless. Like it's like just receiving it in whatever way it's coming through and just sharing it. Like,
Yeah, I can't make love come through me.
Yeah.
It's like, it's funny that's spiritual laughter, because it's silly. When you say it out loud, you see
You're
the
gonna
truth
force
of it.
it.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm gonna make love come through me.
Good luck.
Yeah, it just sounds
Let me know
silly
how
just
that
to
goes.
say it. Yeah, so it's like, okay, there's some spiritual laughter. So it's like, okay, yeah, so it has to be allowed. Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about the work that you do, how you came to write your book, the importance of relaxing into the truth of who we are on the spiritual path, the importance of integrating spiritually into physical form. And I also know that in the community of listeners that I have, people are just curious. They just want to know, they want to hear, and, coming back to kind of the idea of maybe safety and joy and laughter and being on the spiritual path. Like it does feel good to listen to people talk that you feel like you're in a common place with, that you can relate to. And so there's been a lot happening in the past couple of years. I mean, there always is, but it kind of feels, in my experience, a little exponential. Just kind of like the energy shifts that we're in. I'm curious what your take is on that. Like where are we shifting collectively? What is your take on it? Where are we going? I mean, maybe you don't have the answer, but like I'm just curious, you know. Maybe you do
Yeah.
have the answer. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a answer. I don't know if
Right.
it's the answer. Yeah, I mean, like I've been aware of a spiritual shift happening on the planet since I woke up, 18 something years ago. So, but it's picking up so much speed so quickly. It's amazing. I mean, sometimes I see differences in a matter of weeks as things shift. And so I think we're smack dab in it, and I think it's like the way I kind of wrap my brain around it is I think it started back like in the 60s, with the hippie movement and the love and all this stuff. And what happened then was they questioned everything that was never questioned for tens of thousands of years. To oversimplify, for tens of thousands of years, everybody did what they were told to do. There were caste systems, and if your father was a carpenter, you were a carpenter, and like it was just, and you were the religion that your parents were, and you didn't question it. And that's just how things went for tens of thousands of years. And then all of a sudden a large group of people globally were here on this planet, and they questioned everything that had structure, and they shook it. They shook the structure out of everything. Now those structures are still in place, but they shook it enough that they've never been the same since. And I think that that's what they were there to do, is to shake that. Organized government. We're questioning governments more than we ever have, and it started then. Organized religion, corporate America, everything they questioned was longstanding structure, and they shook it to its core. And I think we're starting to come out of that phase now. We're starting to take what was, started there, and we're starting to branch off into the next stage. And where we're going is amazingly beautiful. I believe it's a completely different paradigm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it's, this is where we are now. Lots of people are awakening, and like, I think the biggest mistake people make is that there's usually a breakdown. Somebody I know just said this, and it's not the first time I heard it, but they just said it yesterday on a post, and it reminds me of it. That there's always not always, often a breakdown before a breakthrough. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing everything, the illusion of safety. We're seeing that breaking down. Where people thinking they're right, we're seeing that break down. And what does it look like? Well, from the outside, it looks like destruction and turmoil, but that's what change looks like.
Yeah.
Like this is what we're looking at, is change, and it often looks ugly, and it's noisy, and it's scary, and all that stuff. But that's what change looks like.
As you're saying that, it's like, from a female perspective, it's like giving birth. It's like the nasty ugliness, contraction, and then the beautiful,
right. And that's what we're doing. We're birthing a new paradigm into this world. And and it is going to be based in love, because we've tried everything else. Nothing else works, and people are starting to come to that conclusion. And if you look in most developed countries, I think it's probably conservative to say that 75% of the people are addicted to distraction. May it be,
I think that's conservative for sure.
Yeah. So may it be illegal drugs, alcohol,
busyness.
Oh my God, completely.
That's busyness. Like, those are all my clients.
Yeah. Busyness, prescribed drugs as much as non-prescribed drugs, and busyness, sex, relationships, shopping, Candy Crush, like whatever, social media. But why are we masters of distraction? It's because of spiritual awakening. How is a spiritual awakening going to manifest in this reality? Through people. Well, what does that look like? It looks like uncomfortability bubbling up. And there's been a major change in the last couple generations. If you talk to somebody 2 generations ago and you go, were you really joy-filled, fulfilled, and happy with your career? You'll be like, what?
Yeah.
It paid the bills. I raised my family. It was fine.
Yeah.
But that was good enough for tens of thousands of years. It's not good enough anymore. This is how the spiritual awakening is bubbling up within people. And most people are busy distracting themselves from it because they don't like the way it feels. But what it's doing is there's something within us that is being birthed within us. Each person that's going, there's got to be more to life. I'm not fulfilled. I don't live joyfully. I think I'm wasting my life. That what's going on? That is the spiritual awakening that's bubbling up. And when you face it and lean into it, that's where you find your individualized pathway to joy, peace, love, happiness. And so when people, it's happening to everybody. It's just the people who are really good at distracting themselves haven't decided to lean into the spiritual awakening yet. But most of them will, and some of them won't, and they'll pass away not having awakened. It's okay, they're eternal.
Right. And I want to speak to the people who who I can see from a distance are becoming very uncomfortable because they're choosing to stay distracted, although they're being called to step into this shift. And so you and I are in the roles that we're in because we kind of got wake up calls a little early. I used to be corporate. I used to be in the military. I was an engineer, like big major shift for me. And so, you have your story around addiction and waking up through that and just realizing that there's more to life than just this. I do what I'm told. Yes, we actually do get to fully express ourselves through the human body. We get to express, I like to say, live in our expression of grace, like just fully express that. And it's just so interesting to have children and then to also just see like the generation of the 20-year-olds, like for them, like the way that we have been living is like not even an option. It's like I have one daughter who wants to be a professional surfer, and she's like, you can get paid to surf, like, duh. I mean, she's on her way. Yeah. She just surfed Pipeline yesterday for the first time. In fact, she's 13. Like, she's sponsored. Wow. She's fully sponsored, like traveling. We're homeschooling her. And it's like, when I grew up, I was going to choose like engineer, doctor, lawyer, because those were safe and they made good money, and a woman can't depend on a man for her income. So I did. And, it literally almost cost me my life because I was living so out of alignment with my true self. I like to call the health crisis a soul upgrade. And that's what happens is we don't have to have a breakdown, but a breakdown is a really quick kind of pat in the butt to you better get your stuff together and see the truth of who you are, not who you think you're supposed to be. And, hopefully for those of you listening who are kind of like, I kind of feel the shift and it's really uncomfortable. Like that's what Glenn and I are here for, to walk that path with you. We've been through it to guide you in a way that, is aligned for you and your experience. The invitation's open. You get to choose. Right?
That's it. The invitation. Yeah. Like most people wake up through suffering, and it's not because we have to. It's just, that's not the system. The system is based in love. So how is that love? So it's not that we have to wake up through suffering. It's right. Just that's usually what captures our attention. Because, right. I always tell people, I'm like, nobody hires me because they're bored on a Tuesday. Yeah. Like they hire me because they can't take their life anymore. They're sick of suffering. Mm-hmm. So they're looking for another way. That's why they hire me. And it's like, yeah, so you're right. The invitation is there. Everybody has the choice. So if you're feeling that nudge, if you're feeling that uncomfortability, my advice is to follow it, because the elevator's going down. Like you can get off whatever floor you want, but like your suffering isn't going to, if you're not happy with your life and how you're living it and who you are as a person, it ain't getting better.
Yeah.
Unless you make it better,
That's like, right.
So,
well, and you're going to be uncomfortable either way.
Yeah. I'd rather be uncomfortable leaning into joy, peace, love, and happiness than be uncomfortable suffering.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, just pick your poison.
Yeah. Or pick your joy.
Yeah, I'd recommend it.
Yeah. So, as I come to a close, I really want to thank you for your time and just sharing your insight on just kind of the human experience as a spiritual being overall. I'm just wondering, who do you enjoy working with the most? I'm just curious, or what part of your work do you enjoy the most?
My favorite client is somebody who's ready. That's all. Because to me, everything is spiritual. Like, so it doesn't matter. This is why, you know, when you become a life coach, a lot of times, you know, there's this pressure to pick a niche, and, you know, what do you do? What type, you know, and I'm like, I teach spirituality, but in a very practical, down to earth way. So like, you know, I don't care what your spiritual beliefs are. I can work with you if you're open and if you're ready.
Mm,
So and it doesn't matter if you just want to focus on expanding your soul, or if you're having work issues or relationship issues. It doesn't matter, because those are symptoms on the surface. When you go down, it's a spiritual shift that needs to take place when you get underneath it. And then when you shift something at the core, it takes care of many manifestations that it's attached to. So like, somebody will be like, oh, I'm struggling at work, and you shift the core, all of a sudden, you know, the work environment completely shifts and their relationships get better and all kind, you know, and it's like,
so
how did that
true.
all happen from one little shift down at the core? It's because everything is the stuff we see on the surface is symptoms. And in the
Yeah.
United States and other developed countries, we're so used to treating the symptoms instead of the cause. Let's just get down to the root of the cause.
Yeah.
So like, my favorite client is just somebody that's ready. It's just, are you ready? Or do you want to like be like, well, I don't know, I kind of want to do this, but I'm not sure. Well, then don't come talk to me.
Yeah.
You know, because I've got other things to do, and it's just, that's not my forte. Like, if my clients learn very quickly that I don't sit there listening. I talk a lot. It's, you know, that's my personality, and I do. And one of the reasons I don't pull back from that when I'm coaching is because I believe I'm here to get information through me and to give them as much help as possible. And as soon as I understand the dynamic of what they're expressing to me, I'm on to solution. I don't need to sit here for a half an hour listening about the details of your problem. Let's just get to the solution. Because, you know, if you want to just go sit on a couch and talk to somebody, then, you know, there might be a therapist or a counselor that's willing to do that. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I do not sit there listening to you complain.
Well,
I
and that's
focus
not
on the
what
solution.
that's not what coaches do anyway, just to put
Right.
clarity around that. Like you said, that's what a therapist is for. One of the things that came through for me recently is, like, instead of, you know, the couple things, one of the quotes I said is, don't be so busy trying to find yourself that you forget to create yourself. And then the other one that came through is, instead of being so busy trying to figure out, you know, who you were, bring your attention into who you're becoming. And so that's really just the shift, is like, we want to dip the toe and navigate all of the experiences that have made us who we are. Yes. And also, okay, who are we willing to become moving forward? It's like the and, not the but. And just, you know, the willingness, you said the person you like to work with is the person who's ready and willing. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, that's it. It's, you know, I learned it in recovery. The three things that they say is open-mindedness, honesty, and willingness. And those are the only three things that are needed for change, but they are indispensable. You have to have them.
I love
You
that.
know?
Yeah, I would agree
So,
with that.
and you know, as I transitioned out of the recovery world into, you know, working with everybody, I found that to be true. It's, you know, with everyone, it's just open-mindedness, honesty, and willingness. If you got them, you're good. If you don't, you might have to suffer a little bit more, but you'll get them.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can people find you? Find more about the way that you work, your, you know, social media, your podcast. Where can people find you?
Well, I complicated everything and just made it all Glenn Ambrose.
Nice.
So,
I love that.
yeah. So it's all, you know, the only catch is there's two N's in Glenn.
Yeah.
So it's glenambrose.com is my website. That's the name I'm under on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You know, my academy that I recently launched is glenambroseacademy.com. So there's that. And of course there's links in between things and stuff, but yeah,
And then
just
the podcast.
podcast. And my podcast is even Life Lessons and Laughter with Glenn Ambrose.
There
So
you
like
go.
if you Google Glenn Ambrose with 2 N's, like I'm all over the place. You'll find me. Yeah.
Awesome. As we close, what is just maybe one little, I don't know, kind of reflection or intention or nugget of wisdom you just want to leave the audience with today?
I think that it's easier than we think.
I love
It's
that.
we turn everything into because on this planet everything is linear, so you learn addition, then subtraction, then multiplication, then division, and and then somebody tells you when you graduate, and all this stuff. So it's linear, and we've been conditioned to believe everything is work, and that's daunting, and it's unconscious. So a lot of people aren't even aware of it. And so I try to get people, it's along the same lines of what we are talking about earlier about the joy of it. It's like, try to wrap your brain around the reality that you don't have to reprogram your entire brain. You don't have to overcome 40 years of conditioning. You don't have to learn all new ways of being. What you need to do is just remember who you truly are. It's remembering. We know everything we need to know. It's within us already. It's our natural state of being. So it's just about forgetting what we were conditioned to believe and remembering who we truly are. And that's a much easier task than learning and working and all that crap. So just
So true.
forget and
So
remember. It's easier.
Yeah. Thank you for that permission and for that message. And I hope that is landed in the listeners, because as you say that, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's so much more manageable.
Yeah. It's like, I got this.
Yeah. And that's the attitude. That's what makes the journey fun. The joy is in the journey. So like happiness is not a destination. It's a means of travel. We don't have to wait until we get it all right before we experience happiness. So we might as well enjoy the ride,
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you for your conversation, for your presence, for your laughter, and for joining in on the Embodied Healing Self this week.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was definitely a joy to talk to you. I didn't know really too much about you. We hadn't had a conversation before this. So I looked over some of your stuff and I knew that you knew your stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. But getting to know your personality and stuff was really enjoyable. So thank you. Thank you for what you do and sharing this time with me.
Thank you. Right back at you. And to the listeners, thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting with you all again next week. Aloha.